Salt is one of those ingredients that you use every day but you don't really pay much attention to and probably take for granted. But cook something without salt and you will notice right away. Most salt is actually mined. Some will come from the sea. They will all be different in sizes depending if they're ground or just harvested. And they all have different mineral mixes which makes them taste different. At one point, salt was extremely valuable, even being called white gold. Roman soldiers were actually paid in salt and not actual money because salt was one of the only ways to kind of preserve food. Hence the word salary or sal meaning salt. The Philippines does produce its own salt. I love this really kind of fluffy, almost fleur de sel like salt from Pangasinan where they harvest just the top layer and gives you really such great quality. But a recent find for me was the Asin Tibuok, which you need to kind of cut blocks of and let that dissolve in your food. And if you've never tasted this is so salty and it actually reminds you of like a really salty sea. It looks absolutely awesome and you can literally taste the history in it, but unfortunately it's an art that is slowly dying. So today we're gonna learn about who is actually keeping this culinary tradition alive. Asin Tibuok is known for its sharp taste with smoky and fruity undertones and has been described as the purest and cleanest artisanal sea salt. But for something deceptively simple, it takes several months of preparation and requires meticulous care and vigilance, as it can only be made from March to December due to the sea salinity. This is why it finds itself on the brink of extinction, with only a few families having the patience and grit to continue bringing it to life. One of these is the Manongas family, one of the last asinderos of Albuquerque Bohol.
Ako si Nestor Manongas, taga Albuquerque Bohol. Ako ang tigama sa Asin Tibuok. Ako na kuan lang ko kay sa akong amahan, mao ay may pagkamat ko na mao may akong imatngunan nga nagbuhat og asin. Gitrain ko sa akong amahan para makamao ko wag asin. Mao nang asa siya, tuwa ko gay dala-dala niya. Parang mahibaw ko sa trabaho sa pinubre nga trabaho. Asin. Hantod nadako ko. May trabaho gyapon niya.
This is one of the few surviving pre-colonial practices, when inland-bound rice farmers used to trade with asinderos in need of rice, each obtaining their staple for the year. Tatay Nestor's brother, Father Chris Manongas, shares more about the rich history of salt making in their family.
In my memory, when I was already born in that tradition, and I was told that even before my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, started the tradition or continued it, there was already that practice of that way of making salt, the Asin Tibuok process.
Wala gyud gi-experience sa mong amahan mahitungod sa tradisyon sa paggama sa asin. Ako lang yung baluan nga mao gyud niyang gitagaag pagtagad kay aron makahimo siya pagpakaon sa iyang pamilya. Diha gyud mi nakakaon nga wala may makabsi og gitawag og humay tungod sa kakugis sa mong amahan.
It's really tedious. It's just imagine to produce 100 units of Asin Tibuok. It takes us 3 months to do that.
Coconuts first have to be harvested, used, and then husked. After that, they're soaked for 3 months to act as a vessel for seawater. They are then chopped and dried out in the sun. At no point can these be rained on. If they do, they have to start from scratch, as this would reduce the overall salinity of the product. After 5 days, they are burnt and reduced into ash, or what they call gasang, which needs to be white. The gasang is then filtered into a funnel-shaped bamboo called the sagsag. This is lined with some leaves to act as a strainer. Seawater is continuously poured to leach out the salt or tasik from the ashes. This step usually takes 3 days and nights with little to no sleep at all. After this, the tasik is poured into special clay pots, usually hundreds of them, all lined up in rows over a special furnace. These are left to simmer, continuously replenishing the evaporated liquid as they go, also making sure to tend to the fire and making sure that it stays at the right temperature the whole time. This goes on for a whole day and is repeated as more and more solid mass accumulates at the bottom of the pot until eventually it cracks. Hence its nickname, dinosaur egg. All the clay pots are then finally put to rest to cool down before you're able to use them. The process is long and arduous, but is it all worth the time and effort for traditional salt makers like Tatay Nestor? Currently, Asin Tibuok only sells from 400 to 700 pesos in the market, a far cry from the common table salt that anyone can get for less than about 80 pesos. But if you compare its price point with its international counterparts, you will realize that it's actually in the same range, if not cheaper, than some of the most expensive salts in the world.
Okay, sugod na ta sa atong nilugaw para pagkahuman ani atong timplahan sa asin tibuok. Atong gibutang ang white rice. Hinahinay ni siya atong sigaan hantod mahimong maabot sa nilugaw. Kani nga nilugaw, since gagmay pa mi, magyud taon ni among kanon kay maghulat mi sa panahon sa ting-ani. Kay among amahan, mao gini trabaho sa among amahan, mag-asin, unya malipay mi inighuman sa asin kay isuroy sa bukid. Labay sa duha ka buwan, balikon sa among amahan kay magkubra na sa bayad sa asin nga mao ang humay.
So when we were growing up, we were talking among ourselves, those who were involved in that, the family, the sons and daughters of Asin Tibuok making families. We were talking among ourselves and saying, we cannot just stay here with the same livelihood until we grow up, until we die, because then we will have no economic progress with that. The young generation, in our generation, we slowly lost interest in that.
After making the salt, they still had to go to the farmlands and mountains to trade their yield with the farmers. The cycle became way too much to bear, and so the siblings pursued different paths. The eldest, who was the last one to make the artisanal salt in their family, became a carpenter. Tatay Nestor became a plumber, while Father Chris went on to become a priest in Zamboanga. The salt-making tradition in the family came to a halt. Their salt-making hut was destroyed by the typhoon and forgotten in 1983. That was until the 90s, where Father Chris saw an opportunity.
In the 90s, towards the turn of the century, there were only just from 200 salt-making families. There were some like 2 or 3 families left, aging salt makers. At the turn of the century, there was only one left, and he can only produce like 50 to 80 pieces once a year. And then around 2010, there was no more production. Now nobody is interested anymore. And so I thought of why not revive it and give it a new life using some kind of machineries to help ease the hard labor in the production.
Pagka kuan sa umanghon nga nagahuman na siya, upil sa naho nga nung atong balikon to paggamas asin kay wa na nagamas asin ron. Di ko mo kuan kay peteng haguan ang trabaho ah. Sa ayaw ka balaka kay tagaan ka rin pagkasadong nga trabaho. Parang di ka haguan. kuan sa bunot, palitan sa sakyanan, pagkuha sa kahoy, palitag sinso. Kung pag kanang nay sa libong kita na kuan, palitag makina, parang hose na gamiton. Lahi yun sa una. Kay manumano ikaram usa. Mutabang ko sa una usahay nga kami duha sa akong amahan. Karon kani ana may itagaan mo kung ano gyud na ayong katabang. Mo tung na kuan po ko na ganyo ko ba yun? Sige, balik ka.
So mao nang gusto niya nga i-restore kay gitawag na niya nga legacy para sa pamilya nga kining gibilin nga panginabuhi sa among amahan nga dili na mo makalimtan hantod sa among mga apo, hantod sa mga sungay.
He was able to convince his siblings to revive the family tradition of making salt, but it was just one of the many hurdles that they had to overcome.
Facing all the difficulties at the beginning, I have to make a loan. I have no money for all myself. I am a priest and I have no income. It took us almost 5 years to repay the loan with so many penalties. I just cannot live it. Because of my love for the tradition, my love for it. I always remember my father, my grandfather, all the people who have been working with it.
Tay, mangutan na ko tay. Unsa na to pagkahibalo tay nga maayo na siya nga abo.
Ikaw nga dugay na kang kuan, expert na magana na kay bawo na magana nga pilay kining dao ba o pilay dadon pila ka kun dadon ane.
Thankfully, their sacrifices have been slowly paying off. The Asin Tibuok got global recognition as it got listed in the Slow Food Arc of Taste Catalog of Endangered Heritage Foods in 2016.
What makes me happy now is that people have noticed it. So many people, we never imagined that our Asin Tibuok will reach the United States and will reach Australia and will reach Europe. And it has, because some people got interested, they bought it. And now, many other old asinderos, now they're getting interested again. And they're organizing so they can go back to doing it.
While there has been growing interest in the salt, the ultimate question remains: who will continue the tradition when all the aging asinderos are gone?
O sa amo lang nga pamilya, ug makita na mo nga sa among mga anak, wala gyud kauban namo sa production karon or sa pagmaneho sa Asin Tibuok sa among mga anak. Tungod kay naa na sila karon lain nga mga career.
Mao na yung kuan na bitaw kay sige ko awhag nila ba nga pagtuon lagi mo ng kuan asin kay aw mong tun-an nga pagsugod kanang na among taktik ani pag kuan para lang kuan ba madali ang pagtrabaho. Di man sila mo sugot, di man sila mo gana.
Unsa ka ay mahitabo kung si Enong Nestor tungod sa iyang pangindaron 72 years old magkahinay na iyang panglawas. Unya wala siya mga anak nga na-interest ani kay tuan na sila sa ilang kalalain nga panginabuhi. Ang dili taga Bohol gusto nilang dili gid mawala. Gani gitawagon ko sa usa ka client nato o customer sa nga, "Ma'am, ayaw ba yan ninyo ibaligya sa dayuhan ang inyong paghimo sa Asin Tibuok? Ayaw ba yan ninyo itugan?"
While nobody from the younger generations have expressed interest in continuing the family's salt-making legacy, hope is not entirely lost because there's still someone, albeit not someone from the family, who's willing to do so. And that person is Pong, Tatay Nestor's assistant, who has been helping him out since 2010.
Ang sinugdanan ani nagmuha silang trabante kay mo operate dapat sila balik silang asinan. Ya, silingan nun mi sa anak ni nung Nestor adto. Iya kong giignan di kuan po ko'y trabaho. Gisugot pag ko, suway ko trabaho. mura mayong pangitaan po, di mo kailangan trabaho. Sa among pagkuyog, mura nakasinati ko nga sa paghimog asin, diha ko nakuha tanan yang mga iya kong tudloan, ansaon. Basta diha na ko nakuha yung mga teknik niya, yang itudlo sa ako. Unsaon bag sa libo, kanang magluto. Paningkamutan lang, mapirpik makuha tanan yang diskarte. Pero sa pagkakaroon, murag dili pa kaayo nga makuha gyud.
A tedious and tiresome process, yes, but without a doubt, painstakingly beautiful. And yes, this Boholanon legacy is worth all the time, effort, and sacrifice. Whether the younger generation sees this and acts on it, no one can tell for sure. But our hope remains that from fire, water, and ash, this tradition will not lose its spark and instead burn brighter, before it's too late.
Pera. Let's go.
Okay kayo, thumbs up.